In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of a real media product? During my stages of planning, I was mainly analysing Kerrang and Q's magazine. These magazines gave me an insight into which conventions I would potentially imitate and which conventions I would want to change. At a glance, when analysing Kerrang's front cover, the whole magazine as a whole had electric colours which were really appealing visually because the colours were bold, blended well, and this effect I considered as useful because one of the very aims of a front cover is to catch someone's attention. And from analysing this, I used this convention by using an electric orange, white, and a mahogany red to show some influence towards my genre of rock. From the magazine's masthead, it was apparent to say the least that it dealt with rock because the masthead was cracked, in some way connotes violence, and the outline of the whole title was scuffed. This is one convention in which I plan to use and develop further to express my genre. This led to me using a scuffed font called Soul Mission for the masthead. This font allowed me to copy but also twist conventions as the font was more rigidly edgy than the Kerrang masthead. The Kerrang front cover's picture very much so showed that the male artist was dominant, as it was taken from a low angle to give that impression. And also a lack of eye contact shows that the artist didn't really want to engage with the reader or the audience, and it connotes rock because it shows a lack of care for everyone else. My product challenged this convention to some degree because my product had a female on the front, and in general terms, females are usually seen to be less dominant when being compared to the males. However, I used a female to challenge this convention and the general stereotype on dominance. She gave direct contact to the audience. She was on her hands and knees, and I was trying to get her in the state of mind of an animal, but also to show the expression on her face. With all this set in stone, I took the image at a low angle, providing her with dominance. This whole model of how I planned her to stand completely challenged the convention of the male artist in Kerrang's magazine, because they are one, binary opposites in the sense that he stood up and she's on. He is not given direct address, whereas she is, and I've used a female instead of a male. In terms of mise-en-scène, the conventions that I did use do not differ as much in comparison to the male on the front cover. He's wearing black, and respectively so is my model. So it's almost safe to say that in terms of costuming and colour that I used, they do not differ. The way my model is portrayed differs from the convention of the male artist in Kerrang because in heavy metal, they do not heavily use props, but they seem to be more focused on looking scary facially and engaging with the reader than directly showing music instruments to show that they're a band or musically involved. A prime example being Slipknot. In the Kerrang magazine, it uses a skyline which is mainly promoting the upcoming festivals. I used this convention not to showcase festivals but to broadcast to the public that there were tickets to be won to go see one of the popular bands. This convention seemed ever so relevant in the respect that it entices the reader to want to read the magazine and find out more about the competition itself. Rather than challenging, I have utilised the skyline to my advantage. The Kerrang front cover layout is all over the place, boosts are scuffed and they are placed rigidly to connote the genre of rock. This convention I used, but not to the standard in which I could have used it to, because my magazine is a Halloween special. So in a sense, it's predominantly focused on the Halloween aspect, and only uses a couple of boosts to reiterate that it's a Halloween special. And just to give insight into the headlining story rather than having boosts promoting other stories within the magazine. In some respects, I use one of Q's conventions of placing some of the exclusive interviews on the front cover. This may have been the only convention from Q which I used, because as I proceeded with my planning, I became to realise that Q's significance to my genre was of very little use to me. Therefore, I could only pick and choose which conventions I saw as useful, and others I could just not possibly imitate. When making my contents page, I had to make one thing very clear, and that was my house style, and most importantly my theme of the Halloween special. The Kerrang contents page followed the house style of the front cover, and it was apparent, because the contents page did not look randomly created. In the contents page, I firstly used the convention that the contents page was split up into sections. Kerrang's was divided into 3, but mine was only divided into 2. So I had less to work with, but I could also make the less look more professional. Kerrang in its first section placed a picture of one of their headlining artists. It provides just a number and a name to help with navigation. I copied this convention and used it on my contents page. However, the only thing which differs between the way I've set it out and the way that Kerrang set it out is that I've only used page numbers, but the picture will more or less be the navigation in my magazine. Noticeably, the medium shot picture which Kerrang uses once again doesn't engage with the reader nor the audience, and likewise the long shot picture which I took doesn't either. In fact, I made it into an album cover. Once again, in terms of mise-en-scène, the picture which Kerrang took is highly emphasising the performance side of the rock genre, whereas my picture is focusing on being more mysterious and creating some form of enigma, so that the reader will feel compelled to want to know more. Another clever convention which Kerrang used was having a preview of the double-page spread. This was one convention which I plan to utilise and will overall sum up the whole magazine, and having a preview of the double-page spread could more than likely entice the reader to flick into that page the article would be present on, again, helping with navigation. From analysing Q's contents page, the layout was very clean and clear-cut. One convention which I definitely did use from Q was their contents page and their cleanness of the subheads of each story. Even though my magazine is predominantly meant to show that it's a rock and heavy metal magazine, it needed some clarity in the writing so that the reader and audience could pick stories to read. When analysing both Kerrang and Q's contents page, I saw that Kerrang tended to have more emphasis on their subscription. And given that this was the magazine in which I was taking most conventions from, I decided to copy the convention and implement it onto my very own. My subscription section is very clear-cut, uses only 2 fonts, which is Soul Mission and Throw My Hands in the Air. I decided to run with 2 fonts only because using many fonts could lead the magazine to look more like a poster. So I kept both colour conventions and fonts so that the front cover, contents and double page spread had the same level of consistency. Creating a double page spread, in all honesty, there aren't many conventions in which I utilised. I made sure I had guides as to where I was going to place my article and picture, but more importantly where my gutters were going to go. Because through my whole analysis of Kerrang and Q's contents and double page spread, it is apparent that gutters are one feature which is heavily used to create a structure and distinguish space. However, even though Kerrang used gutters in their contents and double page spread to connote the genre of rock, they made sure that the lengths of the lines in the body text were all different. This created a sense of edginess and untidiness to portray rock. So here I understood that even though I'm using gutters to separate the space, I can also make the article look rock and roll by making the length of each sentence uneven. Here I have used the convention and implemented it into my double page spread, as most of the sentences don't end at the same point. During my planning of the double page spread, I noticed that there was a major use of enigma, rhetorical questions and pull quotes within the main cover lines. With this in mind, I created a cover line on my double page spread, which created a form of enigma. With this in mind, I created a cover line on my double page spread, which created a form of enigma, but was also a pull quote, as it was on about the supernatural place of hell, which instantly makes the reader wonder what the article means by hell. But it being a pull quote creates a sense of wonder as to why the artist is finding love in hell. Throughout my whole analysis of double page spreads, I have noticed that every single double page spread has had a kicker, which is one major feature which completes the whole process of navigation. Taking into consideration that every double page spread had a kicker, I placed the kicker onto my double page spread and saw that it enhanced the magazine's proficiency. How does your media product represent particular social groups? My media product represents mainly the young generation of heavy metal rock, as it is targeting predominantly in terms of ethnicity the Caucasian males, who are at least 26 and over. However, from my front cover and my use of models, it can be challenged that the audience in which I did reach out to were mainly females, because I used a female model and none of the models that I did use were male. So it's apparent that I challenged my own audience and my questionnaire findings, and it's fully represented by my front cover, contents and double page spread. Reasons as to why I used the white models in order to portray my genre of rock is that overall, when analysing my findings, there are a greater number of Caucasian and Chinese people interested in rock in comparison to the Afro-Caribbean, American and Black Africans. It would have made no sense to place a black person on the front cover if I was predominantly targeting Caucasian and Chinese people. In terms of class, I was looking to target more of the upper working and middle class because if I reflect on how I've priced my product at $3.99 and the age in which I'm targeting, those are predominantly at the peak times in life when they're either established themselves or are just generically working. The type of media institution which may more than likely distribute my media product is the Boa Media Group, who publish both Kerrang and Q's products. They will distribute my product because of the type of industry I'm planning to go into, which is rock or heavy metal. It would make complete sense for Boa to distribute my product because they're, for one, already established in the media sector, so having a synergy with Boa would mean that the product itself could be a seller with the right push behind it.